Welcome back, everybody. One last time here on Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast covering the Las Vegas Raiders. Scott Gilbrandt and Mo Moten with you for our final regular podcast show. There is more coming. We'll talk about that in a second, but just want to, first of all, thank everybody for 9 years of great stuff, content feedback, and of course, your incredible support over the years. It's been amazing. Got a lot of messages, and I know Mo has. I'll let him talk for himself in a second, but a lot of messages. People are like, why? What are you doing? This and that, and disappointment. The good news is, as you know, Mo's not going anywhere. You can always catch him on Bleacher Report. I'm sure he's got other stuff coming up. Be patient. And of course, he does write some some Raider-specific content as well for Sportsnaut, where I'm also a part of the team there, and we'll talk about what's happening there too. But we'll be around. We're not going anywhere. Nobody's dead. Nobody's dying. Nobody's disappearing off the face of the earth. So just know that we'll be there. We'll be conversing with you and having some fun, and we'll talk about details coming up very, very soon. And don't forget, if you're listening on the audio side, subscribe. We'll still have some content coming out. It just won't be a regular podcast. The same with the YouTube. I had some people say, well, you guys are done. I'm going to unsubscribe. Don't unsubscribe. We're going to have some content here as well moving along. Just going to take a different format and different things that pop up. So make sure you do that as well. We'll talk more details in the coming days about that. But Mo, we wrap up the regular podcast here. And I'll tell you what, being in this business, as you know, not only on the writing side, but on the digital content side, whether it's audio or video, you get a lot of people, you get a lot of strange people. And honestly, I pray for those people because there's a lot of angry, upset people out there in the world who show that through their online comments and whatnot. But I'll tell you what, it is such a small percentage of the feedback and conversation we get online. And I know since we really went to the format where we took callers via voicemail, and back in the day when we first started doing email, it has always made the biggest difference to me that we engage with our listeners and our viewers and our readers, because after all, we don't put content into the air for ourselves just to put it out there in the ether. We put it out for people to react to read through, to consider, and through the tough times, through the days when it's hard to get up and get through the grind of doing Raiders content, especially these tough seasons we've seen over the past several, that interaction, those people, the amazing fan base that is Raider Nation is really what kept me going during those down times, those tough times. You agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely, because there were a lot of down times where you're kind of just fishing for how can we package this? The Raiders are losing on a losing streak here. They got a player who's gone AWOL there. I'm not gonna lie to you, Scott. Yesterday, I was thinking about all the bizarre or unfortunate situations the Raiders have gone through the offseason. We were on air for Chandler Jones and Antonio Brown, and most recently Christian Wilkins and his bizarre situation. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about with those situations, but you want a winning team. You say this a lot, that when the Raiders are winning, the shows are a lot more fun because the calls are a lot more upbeat. But shout out to the people for still tuning into us and providing us with great questions and great comments to keep us going through those down years. We haven't had a lot of success to talk about in the show, but the fans and the callers and the writers too, Gary Harkin Reader, always made it fun to come up here and talk Raiders.
Yeah, they really did. And I'll tell you, you go back and you start to think about, like, when I first started this back in my home office in Las Vegas, 2-3 years before the Raiders even moved to Las Vegas. Of course, we started the website first, silverandblacktoday.com. That's where you and I hooked up, right? Because I approached you and said, hey, you want to write some Raiders content, knowing that you were at Bleacher Report, but that you also had a background in the Raiders as a fan, number one. But then as a writer, it gave you an outlet. That's how we got hooked up even before we started doing the show together. And so I think back to those days, those early days, and how things progressed to the radio show in Las Vegas first. And of course, I had a multitude of co-hosts. including my good friend, your good friend, Q Myers at Raider Nation Radio, one of the best in the business. And I appreciated the time I spent with him. Of course, Kelly Kreiner, our resident comedian curmudgeon, and somebody who likes to really joke around a lot. Had fun with him on our Sunday morning shows when we used to go into the studio in Las Vegas. And of course, my good buddy Chaz Osborne as well, who did Silver and Black Tonight when we had a nighttime show in Vegas as well. So it's been just an amazing ride. And I keep getting the question, why? And part of that is just moving on to do something different. And also, Mo, you know this too, because you have an incredibly hectic schedule with your writing side. You also do TV spots. You've been CNN, TNT, you name it. You've been all over the place. It's hard to get this content done and to do it. So the grind of that in itself is something, and it's just something that I wanted to change up and do something different. You know, you always have to challenge yourself. And so I know some people will be disappointed not being able to tune in during the season and hear 3 episodes a week. But that's just a little more color behind that as well. But yes, all of the things, I go back to the day the emails on John Gruden came. I mean, all the news and craziness around the Raiders. And of course, we take the show and we say goodbye to it. And of course, the Raiders seemingly have the most optimistic, I think, trajectory now than they've had since we started doing the show. So it's kind of interesting that way. But this has always been about getting on and doing it objectively. That's the other thing, Mo. You grew up a Raiders fan, but you've always kept it real here. And in a world, as we saw with the U.S. hockey team winning the gold medal, it became political. And that's unfortunate because we've tried to always stay objective. And there are people out there who want content that only agrees with their point of view. Still get comments to people. It's like, well, you guys aren't even fans. Well, it's not true in Mo's perspective. In my perspective, I've always been a fan of the Raiders doing well. I don't root against the Raiders, never have. Why would I start a business around the Raiders if I didn't want them to do well? But that piece of it too, being objective, we could have a lot more views on YouTube. We could do all sorts of things to drive more clicks if we were hyperbolic, but that's just not who we are. I know it's not who you are, and you have to stay true to who you are.
Right. And for the people that don't think I'm a Raider fan, explain that to my family and friends and ex-girlfriends who've bought me a bunch of Raider apparel and see me wear a bunch of Raider things outside of what I wear on the show. I'll explain that to them. But I don't worry about those type of comments only because I'm trying to establish a certain brand of sports commentary, whether it's talking about the league when I'm doing it for Bleacher Report, writing about it for Bleacher Report, or when I'm talking Raiders. And even when I was 15, 16 years old, I always wanted commentary that was honest. I was not the type of fan that wanted to hear all the good things and be led to believe that my team is great when it wasn't. And I try to convey that as a sports commentator, creator, when I'm on YouTube with you, Scott, or whether I'm writing about it over at Bleacher Report or Sports Not, that look, I'm going to give you my fair point of view. It's not always right, and no one is always right. Contrary to what you would think on social media, you would think they're looking for someone who's always right. No one's always right. But I'm always going to be honest about what I feel about the Raiders and through an objective lens. And that's just how I roll. That's how we rolled on this show. And I think that's what also, despite some of the negative comments that we got, I think that's what made our show different than a lot of other shows out there, Raiders or NFL related, that we were going to call it straight down the middle versus wave the pom poms every chance we got in situations we knew weren't going to end up well. And how many times did we get on the show, Scott, where we were like, Raiders 7-10, 6-11, and we get fans push back and say, no, 12-5, they're a playoff team, and they end up maybe closer to what we said in recent years. Again, we weren't always dead on right.
No.
But a lot of the weaknesses and strengths we went through, we went through shows getting specific about why we felt that this team wasn't going to live up to expectations. And we had people come back to us and say, you know what? You saw that in August. So you saw that in September. And, a lot of people take pride in taking victory laps and being right. I just think it's about being detailed and knowing the game and knowing your team.
Right. And you certainly reflected that and still do in your writing, not just with the Raiders, but the entire league. And then, of course, your commentary here on the show. And I think That at the end of the day is the most important thing. As you said, if I counted the times I was wrong, it would be right up there with the times I was right. But the thing is, and for those of you out there who've not ever produced content, that's not a criticism. That's just, you have other things you do, you have other professions, whatever it may be. When you don't put your opinion out there, it's real easy to point out when other people are wrong or say, I thought the same thing. But when you put your stuff out there, the record's out there. And that's the thing, 9 years of doing it. Even those people out there is like, well, you were a Charger fan. Yes, I grew up a Charger fan. But did you ever hear me on here rooting for the Chargers or rooting against the Raiders? No. I think that, when you look at that, and that's what I would tell you, there's great content, including fan content. I mean, we devoted a lot of time and raised money for the One Nation Foundation. Murph and the team, Michelle and Jeff over there, great fan show. There are other great fan shows. Just because I don't mention here, it doesn't mean that they're not doing good content. Wasted, those guys, they do good stuff as well. It's a different style. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have its place, but we always tried to maintain that. And I think that our audience, we found our audience, and that's the bottom line. There's people who don't like it, and that's cool. I got no problem with that whatsoever. Just like everybody else, Mo, you and I choose content that we consume on the side for fun, not professionally, and we gravitate towards what we like, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't criticize people who don't do it. Now, in our world today, especially in media, there is a lot of sensationalism. Let's face it. I don't care if you're talking politics, you're talking entertainment, you're talking sports. A lot of people do that. And you know what? They make a lot of money. Hey, and that's what they want to do. That's fine. I could never do that. That's not what I do. So I stayed away from it. And some people say, oh, if you guys took a harder stance on this, or if you did a hot take, you'd have more views, you'd have more money, this and that. Probably, but that's not who we are. So we stayed away from it. And I think that's being true to yourself. And that's what I would say to everybody out there, no matter what you do for a living, no matter what kind of relationships you're in personally, just be yourself. The people who like you and value you will find you. Okay. Doesn't mean it's going to be the biggest audience, doesn't mean it's going to be the most boisterous audience, but the people, your tribe will find you. So if you're thinking about starting content, if you want to start your own Raiders thing, or you want to start something else, as long as it's not the Dodgers, sorry, got to get my Dodger dig in there. Go ahead and do it. Don't be afraid. Don't listen to the negative comments, because people outside the arena will always criticize people in the arena because it's hard to do. All right, Mo, let's talk some football here. And then in the second segment, we're going to end the show, get into a bunch of calls that a lot of folks saying goodbye and have some things to say about the Raiders. So we'll get to those calls here in the second segment on the Raider Nation switchboard. But again, don't forget, if you don't already follow Mo, follow him on X, MOEMOTN. That's Mo Moten. Now, if you're blocked by him, we're trying to work through that. Mo, I know I've passed on stuff. You're unblocking people as you find out. If people that you want to unblock reach out to you. Now, there's some out there who might realize that you had a reason for blocking them. But anyway, keep doing that as well. I am at LV Gully. The show is SNB Today, and keep that SNB Today handle, because we're going to be doing some stuff. We'll talk about that in a second. But Mo, let's talk about the combine. John Spytek yesterday talked at length, not only with the national media as part of the combine activities, but also with the local media in Las Vegas. He didn't say anything that surprised me. Some people took what he said. He did an interview on Sirius XM NFL radio talking about Maxx Crosby. Some people spin that into, they're going to trade Maxx Crosby. Now, they may very well trade Maxx Crosby. But what I found interesting is that if you're an NFL fan and you follow the combine, every year, the GMs, they go up and they pretty much say the same thing over and over. This is a poker game, Mo. They're not going to show you their hand. So when John Spytek says, hey, look, Maxx Crosby, we want great players on our team. Maxx Crosby is a great player, and we want him on our team. But I always listen. And what GM in the NFL, Mo, wouldn't listen if teams call about any player?
You're absolutely right. As your job is part of your job as GM is listening to offers, listening to, I wouldn't say advice, but consultation from fellow execs and scouts. You have to be able to listen. And I think you never say never in the NFL. Now, I strongly believe the Raiders are going to take Fernando Mendoza, the number one overall pick. But hey, you never know, right? But I think the Maxx Crosby situation has more legs only because of his disgruntled attitude at the end of the season being shut down. I wouldn't completely rule out a Maxx Crosby trade. And I believe he said there's something like he expects Maxx Crosby to be with the team in 2026 because we're in the business of having good players and he's an elite player. And I get that. But things could change rapidly in the offseason. I remember, and I know John Spytek is a different person than Dave Gettleman, but I remember one year Dave Gettleman stood in front of the podium and he vehemently said, "We're not trading Odell Beckham Jr." Straight out said it. Didn't say, "Hey, we're not listening. We're going to listen to offers. We'll see." I don't know. He said, "We're not trading Odell Beckham Jr." And you know what happened, Scott? Within months, the Giants traded Odell Beckham Jr. So, look, again, I know different organization, but these GMs, a lot could change with one phone call. The team offers you something you didn't think you would get, and all of a sudden you have to at least consider it. It's been out there reported that if the Raiders get a Micah Parsons like deal for Maxx Crosby, that they would at least consider it. 2 first rounders and a player. So you would think if the Raiders got 2 first rounders and one of those first rounders is in the top half of day one, and the player is an immediate plug and play guy, it's something they are going to consider, especially if Maxx Crosby is still upset a bit about what happened and he's not completely bought in to the new regime. So I would just keep that option open, keep that idea, keep that thought in the front of your head.
Hey, and I listen, I understand fans. They want certainty, right? They want, oh, is he going or is he not going? Just say you're going to trade him or not trade him. You
That's
can't
not,
do that. Again, it's back to the poker game, being a general manager, being anybody in a business where you have assets that you have to juggle, you have to consider what is your best path forward. You can't let on what your true thinking is. And by the way, we don't know. We don't know where Maxx Crosby is with the Raiders right now, if they've had more discussions, where they're at. He did mention they gave Maxx Crosby a deal that was the biggest deal of its kind outside of a quarterback in NFL history before this. So Maxx Crosby got taken care of by the Raiders. Now it really comes down to two things. One, does Maxx Crosby want to stay in Las Vegas, which we don't know for certain? And then do the Raiders, if given an offer like you said, Micah Parsons, we knew there was a chance that he was going to hold in last year because he was looking for a new deal. But nobody expected that the Cowboys would trade him like that. Now, as it lingered on in through camp and all that, it got a little more contentious, and the insults started, and then you could see it happening. But if I told you the end of last season, yeah, the Cowboys are going to trade Micah Parsons, you would, oh, come on, no way, he's too good, he's this and that. So we'll see what happens there. But John Spytek, Clint Kubiak, the Raiders staff, scouting staff, is in Indianapolis, Mo, and there are needs all over this roster. There are needs on offense. I wrote about it on Sportsnaut yesterday about wide receivers. There are needs, obviously, on defense as well. And I wrote this morning about cornerbacks on Sportsnaut. You have linebacking needs. You have needs up front. You still need another edge rusher, even if Maxx Crosby stays. If he doesn't stay, then you're looking at an even wider gap. You need 2 edge rushers. And this draft in different positions, Mo, this is where the combine, I know a lot of people don't like to watch all the ins and outs and the 3-cone drill and all that with the combine, but the Raiders have a lot of work to do. And it's very important work, because if they are to build with their young coach, young quarterback, and where they're going with their plan, they have got to hit on this draft. Not 100%, of course, nobody ever does. But this is an important time to get things right, to start to chip away, because you're not going to do it at once. Chip away at the needs with young talent that you bring in on those rookie contracts.
It only takes one strong draft class to give you that big leap in the standings. You look at some of the teams in recent years that have done it. Patriots did it with free agency last year, I know. The Bears had some trades with their offensive line. But if you hit on a strong draft class, all of a sudden you're looking at a young nucleus on either side of the ball with presumably a young quarterback in Fernando Mendoza and an innovative play call in Clint Kubiak, and all of a sudden now you're competitive in the AFC West. So just remember, as far back as you think the Raiders are, it only takes one offseason. Now it's easier said than done. You're not going to hit on everything, free agents and draft picks. But let's say you get 6 or 7 players who are contributing in year one, whether they're veterans from free agency and or drafted players. All of a sudden, you're looking at a team that could contend for a playoff spot, which is what Raider fans have been waiting for and calling into the show about, telling us all year in the previous years about, hey, the Raiders could compete this year because they got this and they got that. It could happen if Spytek, as the young kids say, cooks with free agency and all the cap space that he has and all the draft picks that he has. I believe there's a 10-pick draft class as of right now. Now he can trade back, trade up. But it's going to be a big draft class, and I would assume that he's going to take some swings in free agency. So buckle up. It's going to get interesting in the next couple of months.
Well, and in the AFC West, Mo, where the Raiders have been far behind, they just have been, right? But you look at the Chargers, you look at the Broncos, and you say, good teams, obviously playoff teams, but they haven't progressed rapidly as we might have expected, especially maybe Denver has a little more than the Chargers. The Chargers with Justin Herbert just haven't gotten over the hump. We thought when Harbaugh went there, boy, that was going to accelerate. It has a little bit, but not as much as you said, just to show you how hard it is in the NFL. And then you have the Chiefs. The Chiefs don't know if Travis Kelce's coming back. Patrick Mahomes coming off his first really major injury as a quarterback and a starter in the NFL. There's a lot of unknowns in this division. So I agree with you. I think one really good draft class with the right free agents, with your young quarterback, if he progresses. Also, if you go get a veteran quarterback as an insurance policy to tutor him along, if he's somehow not ready, I think he will be ready. But nonetheless, you suddenly can see this turning around rather quickly. I still say a couple years for this team to be in a spot where you start to think about them going deeper in the playoffs, but it's one step at a time. And, you know, if people reach out to me when I wrote the piece on the wide receivers, Mo, well, we're not taking, no, it's got to be this draft has to be all defense. Well, no, you can't look at it that way. And that's the one thing I wanted to ask you, Mo. You cover the entire league, all the GMs, all the teams, the coaches, everybody. You can't approach, and just to educate fans, tell them a little bit when you're approaching building a roster, you might have more needs on one side of the ball going into, for example, a draft or a combine like we are this week. That doesn't mean you just go hard at one side of the ball. You have to look at all of the holes and start to address them step by step. So talk a little bit about that and how you've seen other teams successfully build a roster without just focusing on one side of the ball.
I mean, that's how you build a draft board. You don't build a draft board with just your needs, right? Like you don't just say, well, we don't need this position, so we're just not gonna draft it. And you can look at the Raiders. I mean, if the Raiders went strictly on position need, Brock Bowers wouldn't be on this team right now. Brock Bowers is right now a foundational piece on the Raiders roster and could be a reason why the Raiders take a big leap with Mendoza. So just look around. I mean, you can look across the league at a bunch of different situations, but I just took the Raiders situation, even though they haven't been a playoff team since they did that with Brock Bowers. But you don't draft specifically for need because you could be passing up on an elite player. And all of a sudden, you make some changes, a trade happens, an injury happens, and all of a sudden, you're thinking, "Wow, we should have drafted that player, even though it wasn't a need at the time." So with the Raiders roster, there's so many holes on it right now. You're just drafting the best player available for the most part. Once you draft your quarterback, then you can forget about the quarterback position. You may circle back to it on day 3. Remember, RG3 was drafted by Washington, and they also drafted Kirk Cousins, and look how that turned out. Kirk Cousins wind up starting more games for Washington than RG3 did. Now, I would hope that isn't the case with the Raiders, but case in point is here, you're not drafting specifically for need. You're looking for the best players available at the positions that may not even be at the top of your priority list. So, and that's going to be up to John Spytek to handle. And you can draft a player at a position that's crowded, and you may make a trade. You may trade another veteran who's already on the roster. There's a lot that can go on between the draft, between free agency and the draft, that could free up some spots and some log jams. Now, the Raiders don't have an issue with log jams right now, but that's why I say they should be looking for good players, period, not just based on position.
And you're going to get that young quarterback first overall, and you have to do everything you can to help him be successful. That's not only with his own play, but what you surround him. Now, the Raiders, like you said, Brock Bowers, Ashton Genty, good. Offensive line, need help there. Wide receiver, need help there. So those are you don't want to say, well, we're going to go all defense and in the first 3 rounds outside of Mendoza, we're going to take all defensive players. Well, then what do you do for Mendoza? You have to consider that all in. And that's why it's not Madden, right? It's not a game. These guys have to look at it. It's a tough job. These scouting departments, these GMs, they have to balance, like you said, the best player available along with their needs. And that in itself is difficult. That's why they spend so much time in this time of the year, all the way through the NFL draft and through free agency. These guys don't sleep. They're there 80, 90 hours a week because that's what it takes, because there's so much to do. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on. But I do think, and I usually kind of just, I don't know, jokingly laugh aside when Raider Nation gets upset about national media covering their team. But I will say this, I've seen, and I somewhat agree with the fans out there, I've seen the national media, now that Fernando Mendoza is a 99.99% chance that he's going to be a Raider first overall, I've seen the national media suddenly kind of, the luster is off Fernando Mendoza, at least with a lot of people a little bit, as they talk about, well, he's going to struggle there, he's going to do this. It is interesting how the Raiders' reputation over the last 2-3 decades has taken a little bit of the luster off Fernando Mendoza. And I don't think it's because they necessarily don't like Mendoza, Mo. I think it's more so they believe that Mendoza is going into a situation that they don't have any confidence in.
Bingo. The media doesn't trust the Raiders, and I get it because the Raiders haven't done much. Look how many we talk about how many times they've been to the playoffs since the Super Bowl loss. I mean, I understand the media's skepticism that what quarterback there is going to succeed. Just looking at it from a media perspective, a lot of writers and not content creators, but writers and pundits look at the Raiders the same way they look at the Jets and the Browns. What quarterback is going to succeed there based on their recent history? And you're right, Scott. It's not a skepticism of we don't think Mendoza is good. Is we don't think a quarterback can go there and succeed. The difference here is, I'm gonna risk probably put my foot in my mouth saying this, but it honestly feels different this time. The Raiders have a direction. You got John Spytek and Tom Brady leading the charge there. Mark Davis has taken a step back and allowed his GM to run the show along with his minority owner and Tom Brady. And now the Raiders, for the first time in nearly 2 decades, are probably going to draft a quarterback number 1. So that's another reason it's different this offseason than in previous offseasons. They've been putting a lot of Band-Aids on at the quarterback position. Now it seems like they're ready to draft their quarterback, their homegrown talent, and develop him under, and as I said, an innovative play caller. And that's what, again, makes this situation different than previous years. Antonio Pierce, though he was also a first-time head coach, was not a play caller. It wasn't a play caller for the offensive side, but was a defensive guy. You look at, since John Gruden, have the Raiders had a head coach who you could say, wow, this guy could be a play caller and develop our quarterback. Now they had Josh McDaniels, but let's be honest about Josh McDaniels. He had a past failure. And there were people skeptical then when they hired Josh McDaniels, saying, how do we know that he's learned from past mistakes? We know he could be a good play caller. We see it in New England. But where is his success outside of New England? We've seen Clint Kubiak be a good play caller in Minnesota. I've written about it. We've seen him for a short stint in New Orleans. They had a lot of injuries. Derek Carr got hurt that year. But the beginning of that season, people were like, wow, the Saints offense looks different when they were healthy. So there's a different resume. There's a different vibe in Las Vegas, as the kids would say right now. And I honestly feel it's going to be different. So don't quote me on that. But I understand, while I do understand the media skepticism, the Raiders are, in my opinion, heading in the right direction because they finally have some structure and they finally have a direction.
Well, and you talk about the combine. Now we're early, and we'll see Clint Kubiak there. But if you notice, the first 2 days of the combine, all about John Spytek. He met with the media twice, the national media, then he met with the local media separately. And it's all about Spytek being out front, as it should be. Now, you go back a year, let's rewind to Indianapolis. It was all Pete Carroll, baby. Pete Carroll was everywhere. The gravitas that he brought with him as a Super Bowl winning coach, and obviously his age and maturity, all that stuff. He was the focus. And John Spytek was there. Yeah, he did his press availability, but it was all about Pete Carroll, right? So I think you see a difference there. And again, like you said, at the risk of putting our foot in our mouth, as we've done many times here, it does feel different. But I agree with Raider Nation. Wait and see. Let me see what you do.
Yeah.
And that's how you should do. Skeptics, be skeptics. Optimists, be optimists, and understand that you both are right. You have optimism there. You have reason to be optimistic, and you have reason to be skeptical. So I think no side is right or wrong in this case. It's just a matter of where you are in your fandom or your thinking as a member of Raider Nation, and that's going to be, I think, where we are until they make these moves. We see them on the field, and we see how this team starts to put it together. So it's going to be really, really interesting. Mo, anything at the combine that really sticks out to you that you want to see as someone who covers the Raiders, as far as positions go, that you're really paying attention to and want to see more of?
Nothing that I want to see more particularly because, as you said, a lot of the combine questions and the back and forth is stuff you see every year. There are two things that stood out to me though about John Spytek's pressers. It was one, he talked about bringing back Eric Stokes. Eric Stokes is going to be, if he is back, a solid number two. The Raiders still need a cornerback who can get after the football because Eric Stokes does not rack up interceptions. So even if Eric Stokes does come back, they still need to address the cornerback position. We'll see what happens with Darian Porter. The other thing was he also made a point that he's not a fan of necessarily throwing out his young rookie quarterback right away. And I think Raider Nation needs to brace themselves with the possibility that Mendoza may not start week 1. And he may start week 3 or week 4. But I wouldn't panic and say, oh, he's not progressing well at the practice field if he's not on the field week 1. Tom Brady has talked about this. And now Spytek talked about this, I believe, on Tuesday, that he's not necessarily a fan of just saying, oh, we got the number 1 overall pick or we got a young quarterback, he's going to start week 1. Because that's the way the NFL right now is. You draft the young quarterback, you got to get him out there ASAP because then you want to see what he's got and then you want to build around him. But John Spytek is more of the idea that we're not going to put him out there if the supporting cast on him isn't up to par. So if his offensive line is a bit shaky, we have some question marks, we're not going to put our young quarterback out there to get crushed. If he doesn't have the playmakers around him to succeed, we're not going to throw him out there with less. So I would just say, Raider Nation, prepare yourself if he's not the de facto starter week 1. If it is someone else, that's fine. He's eventually going to get on the field, but don't panic and say, "Oh, he's a bust. He's not gonna be great. He's not starting week 1." Number one overall picks who've been quarterbacks have started outside of the last one was Baker Mayfield, who didn't start week 1. Since then, those guys have been on the field, and the Raiders may go old school and do things a little bit different.
They might. And I said this to somebody, one of our listeners was conversing with me on X, and he's like, well, he's not going to play. He's not going to start. And I said, listen, I'm not saying he's going to, but don't rule out that he could. If he wins the job outright, Mo, that happens. But if there's any question, I agree with you. This is an important asset. It doesn't happen hardly ever that you get that first pick in the NFL draft and you get to choose that quarterback like that. So you don't want to take an asset, especially with a young player. We've seen it, as you mentioned some of the names, we've seen it time and time again. You bring a young player in the league, you destroy his confidence, and some of those guys never recover. And I believe it's because of that. Or you see them down the line, like we saw with Sam Darnold. You talk about Baker Mayfield. Those guys got a chance to go somewhere else where the pressure was a lot less, and they matured, they had time, and they succeeded. So I think don't think that it's going to go either way, but I appreciated Spytek's point of view, and it echoes what Tom Brady said last offseason about young quarterbacks in the NFL, and that the NFL is doing a poor job of developing young quarterbacks. So the Raiders know for the future of this franchise, they cannot afford to do that. So it's going to be good and fun to watch how that all unfolds. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get to your phone calls and talk a little bit about Mo and I as well, because I've had some questions and I want to address some of them. So we'll get to that coming up here on Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. One last time, Mo and Scott coming back right after this. Welcome back, Raider Nation. The final segment here of Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. Also, you can follow us on X at SNB Today. Also, YouTube. If you're there, follow us there as well. TikTok, Instagram. We'll still be around. I'll tell you about that in a second. But also want to thank again the folks at Odyssey who have been great partners of ours here. It's been a pleasure to be part of their network. Bill Enever, also all the guys out there, including our producer, Mike Robier, Mark Bonilla back in Las Vegas on the radio, going back to Dan Kearney, who gave me my first show, Raiders show on CBS Sports Radio in Las Vegas back in 2018. thank to all of them for giving us the opportunity here as well. It's been very, very cool. Now, Mo, I've also gotten messages. Is Mo sick? Are you sick? What's going on? Or did you and Mo have a falling out? What's going on? Da, da, da. Neither of those is the case. Nobody, again, as I mentioned, nobody's dying. Mo and I are friends off camera, on camera. It has nothing to do with that. So I just want to make that clear. And I appreciate the question, actually, Mo. Sometimes it seems a little personal when people are asking you if you have a health issue, because health is private. But it comes from a place of concern and caring, which to me is the biggest compliment I can receive as somebody who does content, because that means people actually care not only about the show, but they feel as though, and they've gotten to know us a little bit as well. And to me, I don't care about awards and the money associated, all that stuff. That to me is the biggest reward you can get, is when your audience cares enough about you to care about you off camera, off story, off the podcast, whatever it is.
Yeah, two things here. So first, I want to say that turning 40 this year, me, went through a battery of testing, and I'm glad to say that I'm healthy, 100% healthy. So there's nothing to worry about there with health. The other thing is, shout out to all the people that supported me when I got hacked in
Yes.
January. I was offline for 3 weeks. I just wanted to give a heartfelt thank you to the people who berated Elon Musk and X for not being quicker with reuniting me with my account. I had to go through a lot of red tape, a lot of channels to get it back, but I got it back, and there was a lot of support there. A lot of people were like, "Hey, Mo, Twitter wasn't the same without you." And there are times where I sit back and I just like, I don't want to go on Twitter, only because sometimes it could be exhausted with some of the characters that are on there that will try to troll you and try to get a reaction out of you. But the one positive thing that I got out of being hacked, outside of spending time with the people that are closest to me, is that there are good people out there on social media who honestly enjoy not only the content, but just the regular conversations. We don't just talk sports. We sometimes you and I are back and forth about food takes and whether you should put ketchup on hot dogs and all of that stuff. And I think people love that stuff because it shows more of our character, and they feel closer to the type of people that we are, and they get to know us and our personalities.
Right. And you and I, over the years, and continue to have conversations about life offline, right? That's not stuff we share with everybody, because that's between you and I. But, believe it or not, Mo and I have lives outside of this stuff. We have people we love. I'm married with kids. I got 5 kids, 3 still at home, 3 teenage boys. Got another son about to graduate high school and go to college. I've been doing the college selection stuff as well. I've been married 30 years, coming up in June. So, there's a lot going on. Mo's got the same thing. I'm not going into his personal life because that's his business. But, in careers, all these other things going on and that take our time. And we don't talk about it here, but we feel all the things that you guys feel out there going through life on a daily basis. But man, the support has been awesome. It continues to be awesome. And we hope that the support stays there. As you know, Mo continues his incredible rise in the world of media. His work at Bleacher Report, incredible, where he contributes TV, radio, wherever it is. And I'm sure he'll have more of that coming up now with some more free time away from this. So make sure you keep following him and engage with him. He's always going to talk Raiders with you. He's always going to be writing about it as well. Also, a little back to the future. We started this, as I mentioned earlier, as silverandblacktoday.com was a website when I was in Las Vegas, and eventually sold that off to Sportsnot. And then as this came to an end, Sportsnot approached me about wanting to revive Silver and Black Today as a section nestled in Sportsnot. So we're going to have that. I will be covering the Raiders. Mo writes for Sportsnot when he has the time as well. So we'll still have content there. So this channel, whether it's audio, whether it's video, we'll still have content coming out. It's just going to take some different formats. So don't go anywhere. We'll be around and we'll be engaging on that stuff as well. So make sure you do it. But I figured the only way we could end the show is to take some calls, right, Mo, and hear from the people out there. And you'll hear some typical names, some of our all-star, now Hall of Fame callers, some of these folks that we've gotten to know offline a little bit as well. So we're going to go out and listen to them and see what they have to say. You ready, Mo? One more switchboard?
One more rodeo. Ready to go.
All right, here we go. We're going out to first longtime caller, listener, viewer, and that is our buddy out in the birthplace of the Raiders. And that, of course, is Oakland. That is Anders out in Oakland. Here's Anders.
Hi, fellows. It's Anders from Oakland. Of course, I leave it to you guys to quit the show when we finally have our act together and it is looking bright in the future. So bummed. You guys have been great. I love the show. Always look forward to it. Great conversation. So sad to see you go. Obviously, really sad, but I got to say, I'm as upbeat now as I have been in a very long time. The last time I can remember this was walking home from the Coliseum, or walking to the BART at the Coliseum when we beat the Chiefs, being 0-10, and you really felt like we'd turned a corner. One of my greatest, strangely enough, Raider memories. Thanks again for everything. I'll be listening, and Godspeed to you both. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Anders. We appreciate it. And thank you, Anders. The calls, the intelligence, mixed with some emotion sometimes because you are a fan. But I'll tell you what, Anders, we know too, has a great business career, and he's often intermingled that into the Raider dysfunction to talk a little bit about it from an organizational standpoint. And Mo, I'll tell you what, people might watch the show, listen to the show, and learn from us at times, but we also learn from them. And Anders is one of those guys that I can honestly say over the years, I learned many, many things from him and really learned how to think about things differently sometimes when I might have been in a different headspace.
I'll never forget when I was able to kind of guess what Anders did for a living, and because it shines through his comments when he calls in, and you can tell he knows what he's talking about from a business perspective, and about structure, and about how things are supposed to look, just from a protocol perspective of how you build a organization and how it should be run. You know, the shot callers, the people who carry out orders, and the chain of command. That was the word I was looking for. The phrase I was looking for. Chain of command there. And he really hammered home a lot of those aspects. And I also learned a lot from Anders. And Anders, he's also on Twitter. Doesn't have a huge, massive profile pic or anything like that where he promotes himself, but I always look for Anders' comments in the sea of comments on Twitter because he always has something profound to say. So I will say, Anders, continue to connect with me on X because I do look forward to your comments and where the Raiders are headed.
Yeah, always level-headed. And I think, too, as a fan and as somebody who's covering the team objectively, the emotion can sometimes take over. But Anders was always great about looking at it from both sides. Hey, as a fan, this is how I feel. But as somebody who works inside organizations, works with businesses, especially around that dysfunction, because I think a lot of times it was hard for people to understand. And so Anders brought a lot there. So Anders, you were a big part of the show. And we will never forget that. And as Mo said, please keep in touch and you'll see the other stuff we're doing. So we can't wait to continue to hear from you. All right, let's get to the next caller.
Scott, Mo, what up? What up, Raider Nation? Man, I just found out. I must have missed the episode where you guys said you were canceling and going away. What a bummer, man. Discovered you guys about 6 years ago. The only Raider Nation podcast I listen to, man.
Wow.
I just want to say thank you, Scott. Thank you, Mo. Man, all the guests, all the information, all the breakdowns. It was a great show, man. Great run. Loved you guys. Looking forward to listening to you guys week in, week out. Keeping me up to date with all the stuff that's going on with the Raiders. Man, all the callers. You guys are awesome, man. Raider Nation, you're the best. Raiders. But as you guys leave Raider Nation, we're going to be all right, man. We got Kubiak, got a nice little staff, got the GM, we got a quarterback coming up, we got Bowers, we got Genty. Max stays, Max goes, we'll be all right. We get picks if he leaves. It's like the start of the new stuff, man. Start of the new rebuild here. Finally, like you said, it feels different this time. It is absolutely different this time. We know we said it before. It felt different with AP, felt different with Carroll, but this time it is different. Turnaround starting, baby. Let's go, Raiders. Scott, Mo, gonna miss you. Raider fans, Raider Nation, we'll see you, baby.
All right, great call. Thank you. Keep in touch. We'll be around, so we're not disappearing. But so we appreciate the call and the comments there too as well. But there's that optimism, Mo.
Yeah, I've been calling it the great silver and black reset this offseason. That's been my phrase for it. And not just the structure, because I know I said at the end of the second segment that Raiders now have structure and direction, but they're, as he pointed out in the call, they're also going to have a young quarterback. That is the major difference here between this offseason and previous off seasons. Even though it felt different with the new coaching staff, you still had questions about the quarterback. When they signed Jimmy Garoppolo, he had a foot injury. There was a delay in his open presser, and people were kind of like, I don't know about this. And I tried to warn Raider Nation about Jimmy Garoppolo that outside of Kyle Shanahan, I don't think he's much. You know, you had Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell. Again, compare that to now having the number 1 overall pick with some structure and an offensive play calling head coach. It is different this offseason. Now, it doesn't mean that the Raiders are overnight going to be a playoff contender, but I honestly believe that now with this, as Cole also said, with Genti there, Brock Bowers also already there, now bringing in Fernando Mendoza, introducing Clint Kubiak, it is now going to be different, and we'll see how long it takes for the Raiders to get back to being a competitive playoff caliber football team.
Absolutely. Great call. Thank you again, and thank you for your support as always. All right, moving on.
Scott and Mo, what's up? This is Raider Eddie in Denver. Hey, want to ask you guys about your feelings on the injury risk related to 3 of our best players, Maxx Crosby, Colton Miller, Jackson Powers-Johnson, 3 of our absolute best players on this roster. But each of these guys has demonstrated over the past 2 seasons they do miss time. There does seem to be a pattern developing. They're great players. How would you mitigate those risks for each of those players? I would plan on having an ascending young player in the mix ready to step in, because any one of those 3 could fall off at any time with injury. It's happened already. I'm not super confident that any of the 3 guys can make it through the next season without missing games due to injury. And so, guys, related to that as well, how would you approach Maxx Crosby? Assuming we keep Maxx Crosby on this roster, would you play him closer to 80% of the snaps, 85% of the snaps, whatever top-level Myles Garrett, top-level edge players are really playing? Would you try to play Maxx closer to that type of number of snaps? Because I just don't think it makes sense anymore to play him 100% of the snaps. Love your guys' show. Let's go Raiders.
Wow, great call. Appreciate it. Raider Eddie up in enemy territory in Denver. Couple things here, Mo, and I want to get your reaction. First of all, Colton Miller and Maxx Crosby, both 30 years old. Okay, so you get to be 30 in the NFL at those tough positions. Injuries happen. Jackson Powers-Johnson's 7 years younger. He's only 23, but I understand his concern there. My second point that I want you to comment is above the overall injury is with Maxx Crosby. Maxx Crosby doesn't know any other way but to go full bore. Now, if the Raiders had a really good opposite edge player, would he maybe ease up a little bit because he doesn't feel like the world is on his shoulders? I don't know. It's a question to ask. But we saw him with a major knee injury play most of the season, and then when they shut him down, he was not happy about it. So that's got to factor into, well, does Maxx Crosby play 100% of the snaps? Because what does that create if you suddenly come out and say, hey, Max, we're going to make sure you play 70% of snaps?
Now, I think that's the conversation that they should have. They probably had a bit of that discussion already. But with Maxx Crosby turning 29 in August, I think it is best to have him on the field less. I think in his case, less is more. We've had Brian Boldinger on this show multiple times, and Brian Boldinger has said this, that he's tried to talk to Max about, maybe not necessarily taking a play off, but take fewer snaps, and you'll be a lot healthier by the end of the season. Now, you had to convince Max to be on board with that plan because, as you said, he only knows how to go one speed, and that's full throttle. But that's a conversation that I would have with him in the offseason. Like, look, this is what we're going to do because we want you. If you're going to stay here, we want you to be a Raider, and we want you to be a productive Raider for 8, 9 more years. Now that's tough, but at least 6, 7 more years. We want you to be at optimal level. And I think the only way you're going to do that is if he's on the field for maybe close to maybe 80% of the snaps, as Raider Eddie suggested. But again, you're going to have to convince him of doing that without him throwing a fit about it. Now,
Go ahead.
also with Colton Miller, you would hope that maybe Charles Grant develops into a solid backup. I would still draft more players or bring in another player at the position just to compete with him for that swing tackle spot. Or you also probably want to upgrade at right tackle as well over DJ Glaze, who's younger. But JPJ, he has a history of injuries going back to Oregon. So whether he's playing guard or center, you want to have another player that you can depend on to play both those positions because he hasn't proven that he could stay healthy for the length of the season.
Well, and this is the reason why we talked about earlier how you could change a roster and get into playoff contention with one good year off season. True, but to get deeper into the playoffs to be a championship team, this is why depth. It's all about depth in the NFL, to your point, because you might have a player who's getting older, Colton Miller, or JPJ who gets injured. If you have depth there where a guy can spell him for 1 or 2 games, major injuries where a guy's out for the year, that's a different story. But when a guy gets banged up and gets injured, you have somebody capable to come in there and hold the spot for them and still be productive. That's what you need. When you see teams that make runs for Super Bowls, that's what they do. They have guys who can step in when injured and are able to do that. Now, of course, they're not going to be as good usually as the guy ahead of them, but at least you can get by and get scrappy and have at least capable backups. That's why development of young players in this league is so very important, because you can't go get all the big money guys as backups. You need to have that young player who's ascending, who can step in when a starter is injured. All right, great call. Now let's go out to San Jose, California.
Hey, Scott and Mo, this is Kevin from San Jose. Sadly, I caught you guys at the free agency part of the show. I wish I listened during the season, but yeah, getting tired of the trade the number 1 pick thing. I think we've got to get our guy, and we could build in free agency and the draft. That's the reason, and I don't think the NFL media they don't want the Raiders to be good, and we have a chance to be better. I mean, we lost some closer games-ish last season. I think we're going to be a lot better, and I just think we're getting hated on, and there's, no one's on our side. But I think we're going to do the right thing. It's not going to be that long when the draft call is in. So I'm very excited about that. But, yeah, what are your thoughts on trade, Zach? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right, there you go. First-time caller there from San Jose. Hey, Mo, I think with this one, as we mentioned earlier in the first segment, I don't think it's that the Raiders or the media doesn't like Mendoza or don't think he'll be a good player. It's that they don't trust the Raider organization. Not only that, but you have to remember the Raider brand to Raider Nation means one thing. To the rest of the world who are not Raider fans, the Raider brand right now is not a sexy brand. It can be. It's not. It's up there with the Browns and the Jets. So when they look at that, they don't trust it. And so I think when you start to think about why the media, he said the media doesn't want us to win. I don't think it's that. I think the media doesn't think you can win based on the organization and how many times it's screwed up. Now, you have to change that perception. You have to change the perception of the brand, and that has to be more than a flash in the pan. That has to be done over a course of years. Even if the Raiders were to make the playoffs next year, doesn't matter. That's a one-trick pony. You have to show that you've built the organization in a way that can sustain itself.
I won't add on to that because I'm in line with your thinking there. But what I will tell Raider Nation is this, and it's probably going to fall on deaf ears, but I'll say it anyway. As a person who works in the media and sees how things operate, I won't go into too much detail because I do have an employer that I work for. But I will say this. If you're clicking on articles that you think are nonsensical, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get more of those articles the more you click on them. If you feel like the Raiders, there's no chance, there's a snowball's chance of heck that the Raiders trade the number 1 overall pick, don't click the article and read it. Don't give it impressions on social media, because these media outlets will look at the impressions and the feedback from those articles, and they'll say, hey, we're getting a lot of reaction from this type of article. Let's continue to put out these articles. They don't care whether the reaction is negative or positive. Think about how social media works right now. People don't care if they get positive or negative feedback. They just want feedback. A lot of them get paid money for that. But feedback is feedback, whether it's negative or positive. It doesn't have a differentiation once it goes back to the analytics department. They just want to see that people are interacting with this specific type of article. And if you're interacting with it out of hate and out of disdain, guess what? You're going to get more of that because they see your hate, they see your disdain, they go, that's money in our pocket. That's more bucks that we get because we're getting more interactions from that. So I will tell you, if you don't like an article, if you think an article is completely bogus, do not interact with it or you will get more of it.
Right. It's what I call emotion-based media.
Yeah.
So, and you see it in politics. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on or what your beliefs are. You can watch one channel and they're going to do it, and the other channel is going to do it the other way. And it's all based on that emotion, that visceral reaction that you have to it. And so when you touch it and you reach out to it, it's like, we got to start writing more stuff about the Raiders trading the first pick. Because your anger, it's not feedback, it drives the beast. So very well put, Mo. I appreciate that. All right.
Really quick.
Yes,
Scott.
go.
In today's world, just remember the worst thing that you could do is ignore something. You ignore it, it goes away. You feed into it, whether it's negative or positive, it comes back, it continues, you get more of it.
Right.
I'll say
Absolutely. That. Well said. All right, let's head out to Chicago.
Fellas, Joe from Chicago. I just heard the news that the podcast is going the way of the dodo, and I'm hurt, I'm confused, taking it personally, if I'm being honest. I loved listening to this show. It was one of my favorites. You guys, I could call in and I could roast Visor Boy or Luke Getsy or Brennan Carroll or any of the other myriad incompetents who have unfortunately worked for my team over the last several years, because you guys, I mean this in a good way, you did not have access. And if you're inside, it's very hard to be truthful. And you guys were outside. And I really appreciated the viewpoint. I thought it was spot on. And even when I didn't necessarily agree with you guys, I appreciated your point of view. So I've got to miss it. And I'm not happy about this. Nobody checked with me before Scott made this decision. So look, Mo, Scott's riding off into the sunset, wants to work on Raspberry Pis with his kid. God bless. It's a great thing to do. Scott, thank you for everything you did. Mo, thank you for everything you've done. And Mo, rise up, man. Seize the mantle. Las Vegas is Motown now. And I hope that some other podcast comes out of this, because there's no other podcast that I have to step up into the podcast rotation here, as much as I enjoyed yours. So also, quickly, thank you for the well wishes about my surgery a couple months ago. Everything was fine. And just like me, now the Raiders have found the right guy to assess the problem. And here we go. I'm optimistic. Gonna miss you guys, and hope to see you or hear from you very soon. Thanks again for everything.
Joe in Chicago, great call there. Thank you so much for the kind words from Mo and I. We'll be around though. We're not going anywhere. You'll be able to be in touch with us, and I will post pictures of my Plex server that I built with my son using the Raspberry Pi computer. So yes, doing other stuff, but we'll still be involved in Raider stuff. And Mo, you will have, I'm sure, at some point an announcement on other things that you're doing to keep in track with that. But that's the kind of thing, Joe's joking, nobody asked him. And I appreciate that. And we've always appreciated the feedback, both constructive when we were wrong, or when people had recommendations, or when the audio was bad on an episode, or whatever it is. And I think Joe is a great example of, I think, kind of what our core listeners are like.
Man, Joe hit me in the feels there, because we had some memories. Joe's gone through it, went through some health issues and had it rectified now, and we're thankful that he's okay. I also, again, pull back the curtain, because being in the media, Joe was spot on when he said this, that when you're a reporter at the facility, it is hard you can't really get on a podcast and be as straightforward. I'm not saying that the reporters have to sugarcoat everything, but they have to choose their words wisely because they have to see these guys every day. And they may be limited with their access if they say certain things. Because let's be honest, a lot of these companies, teams, they're listening to some of these podcasts. Maybe not every one of them, but I'm sure they know what some of these reporters say because the players do. Players hear what some of these reporters are saying about them. So being an outsider, there are some advantages to it. While Scott and I are removed from Vegas, Scott's in Cincinnati, and I'm in New York City, we can say, I don't say what we want because we have to be careful too, but we're not tied to, oh, we're not going to get that interview with that player because of what we said, or we criticize Maxx Crosby, so he's not going to want to talk to us at a post-game interview. Guys like Vinny Bonsignor and people that are over there have to balance that line, have to walk that fine line, and I respect them for doing that. So that's why listening to a content creator podcast like us is a lot different than what you would maybe hear from a reporter who's there every day. And Joe was spot on with his assessment there on that.
Exactly. And when I was in Las Vegas and I had the Daily Show on Raider Nation Radio and I went to the facility during COVID and had to have this thing shoved up my nose every day just to go to practice, you do. It is a different feel. And not only that, and I know I've mentioned this too, Mo, and I don't say it with any disdain. It just is what it is. That the media, the outside media, so the newspapers, TV stations, whatnot, independent creators, they compete now not just with each other in certain ways, but they also compete with the teams. Every NFL team has a massive media staff. So in many ways, they don't really need outside media like they once did. Now, you go back to the 70s, 80s, and earlier than that, even 90s too, the newspaper still ruled the roost, right? You had TV, you had radio, especially talk radio. Now it's fractured so much. The team has its own, and I did shows at the Raider facility from their radio studio. And not only do they have a radio studio, they have 2 full TV studios, not to mention portable stuff they take around. Okay. So you are in a different place. So if you are in that position, like our good friend Q Myers, or you mentioned Vinny when he was at the RJ, those guys are there every day. They can't go and torching people every day because they won't get access. Then you can't do your job or feed your family. So while I understand people get frustrated that the people inside don't ask inflammatory questions sometimes, understand why. And I'm not saying it's the best system in the world anymore because I'm old school. I mean, I'm 56 years old. So for me, I was brought up a certain way and that's how the media operated, and now it's changed. So you have to go along with it. But Mo, I thought that was a great encapsulation and glad you said that. And Joe, thanks, man. We will see you down the road for sure. All right. We're going to close out our calls on this show, our last show, with a guy who is a relentless caller. And I don't say that as a negative. I say that as somebody who always committed to calling the show. He did video drop-ins when Murph and I did the post-game show. He contacts me via text. We become friends offline with his thoughts, his jokes, his memes, all the stuff. And that is our good buddy, Tarek, up in Chicago. Here he is.
What's up, Scott and Mo? This is Tarek from the Windy City. I'm calling for what I think might be your final show this week. Just want to say you guys have done a tremendous job. I regret that I did not discover your show up until about maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago. I know it was a 9-year run, but just a shout out to you guys for doing such a great job in the time that I tuned into the show. Always looked forward to your coverage. Loved your objectivity. Loved that you guys were completely non-biased and told it like it was. I think you guys really complimented each other. Shout out to all the listeners. I mean, some of the regulars I just heard over the last few years. Shout out to my boy Yandog, Pastor Mike, Jacob from Fresno. I mean, you learned all those names, and you guys not only had people calling you domestically, but you guys were also receiving international calls, which I think is clearly a testament to just how you guys grew and just your fan base grew as well. So I would kindly ask you gentlemen to reconsider. In all seriousness, I would, definitely mad love to you guys, and I'll definitely miss corresponding with you guys on a regular basis. And please do keep us posted on what you have in store next. If it is silver and black related from both you guys, I don't know if you guys are going to go your separate ways or you guys are going to collaborate to bring something bigger and better to Raider fans across the globe. It's been a great run. I'm going to miss you guys, and hope to hear from you down the road, and hope to be able to call you guys in another capacity to talk Raiders football. So much love, guys. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Oh man, what a great call from Tarek. Dude, I appreciate all of that. And likewise, we appreciated your call and what you brought to the conversation. And we'll still be around. Don't forget, Mo's doing all these Bleacher Report lives for the Raiders. You can jump right in there, Tarek. And he's got his other work on Bleacher Report, and who knows what else is coming down the road. And then, of course, we'll have Silver and Black Today back on the web, powered by Sportsnaut. So we'll have that up there as well. So we'll be around Raiders stuff. It just takes a different format.
Well, Scott talked about the writing side and some of what he's going to handle over at Silver and Black Today, or what the channel will turn into. I haven't full disclosure, I haven't fully decided what the next move is going to be. I've had a lot of people in my ear. I've had a lot of people reach out. Have rotating co-hosts, do a solo show and just take a bunch of calls. I've had all the suggestions under the sun. I'm taking it all into consideration. If you want to drop a suggestion, MOEMOTON over on X, drop me a DM. I may not answer it right away because, again, I'm being inundated with suggestions, which is great. I love the feedback from the people. But I've just decided to also kind of take a step back from social media and just kind of see and survey the landscape. And I will say this, Scott, some of it, when I watch some of the stuff that's going on and where things are headed with social media content and just sports content, it's a lot of, what we talked about earlier in the show. And it's a lot of people, just doing it for clicks. And I don't want to do that. I want to continue whatever I do next. I want to continue to have my objective point of view, but I also want to continue to include people in Raider Nation. And that's what I always say, what made this show special. My favorite segment is when we go to the calls and we talk to the people. And best to believe, wherever I go, whatever I do, I will continue to include you all. So keep tabs on where I'm going to be, because you will be along the ride with me, Raider Nation.
So I have, Mo is getting a lot of suggestions as well, and I've gotten a lot of contact too. I recommended that Mo should do Meals with Mo, where he goes around to these food spots around New York City and tells us, what you should and shouldn't eat. And then I have worked on trying to make sure that there's no ketchup available to Mo. It's the only thing I'm trying to when it comes to hot dogs. But yeah, you'll know what's going on, because you'll not only hear it from him, you'll hear it from me. Whatever Mo does, I'm going to support, because he is my friend first and foremost above everything. And so you guys will not lose track of us. I guarantee you that. We are, as Mo said, he's taken a step back a little bit from social media. I'd like to do that as well. But at the same time, football season will roll around and we'll be in the thick of it talking about it. Again, it's just different formats, and people have gotten used to this one. And you're right, Mo. There's days I saw a writer with The Atlantic who was writing about the WNBA, which I'm not a big fan of WNBA, the product. Ladies are talented, got no problem with that. I just don't like the product. She was talking about how they had higher ratings in the NHL, so why is not a story? And it's like, well, that journalism doesn't make sense. You're reasserting a point that you believe in because you like women's sports, and there's nothing wrong with that. For people who like WNBA, I'm okay with that. That's their thing. But again, the way things have gone, you have to stay true to yourself, as I said earlier. And even though you're younger than I am, you have the same mentality. That's why I think we got along so well with doing the show, is because we looked at producing content the same way. We didn't look at doing that. And again, that's the world we live in. For people who do it, good on you. I'm not going to come at you. There are some people who are really egregious and they deserve criticism. Most of you are not. And so that is what they do, and that's cool. But again, it's just like, it's like putting on clothes that you don't feel comfortable in to be able to do that.
I'm just not into the rage baity, stuff that goes on a lot now. A lot of people doing things with the misleading headlines and talking about things that they don't really believe in. And that's the other thing you can kind of see, being in this
Very
business
good.
for as long as I've been into it, now going on my 12th year. You can kind of tell when someone's pushing an article that they're doing it just for the reaction, just to get a rise out of you. And again, I go back to what I said about one of the callers saying, hey, if you don't like a specific article, it was the caller from San Jose. If you don't like a specific article you think is bogus, or you think this guy or woman is full of it, don't feed into it. And I just want to be able to have a spot within this content creation field where people still appreciate objectivity, real writing, and research, and will interact with that versus what the rage bait stuff generates as far as clicks and views.
Right. And this show is a perfect example of that. Could we have had bigger numbers, like the video, for example? Could we have had YouTube videos that were 50, 60, 70,000? Probably, but we just didn't want to go there. And so we'll leave that to the people who do it, and God bless them. They're making money hand over fist, just stuff that I don't want to be a part of. And again, people do what they think is right, and they follow their own moral compass, and good on them. For me, I know for you, Mo, as you just said, that's not how we want it to be, and that's how we ride into the sunset on this thing, by staying true to ourselves. And again, I say that to all of you in your lives, not just with content. Stay true to yourself, because you will find the people who do it, and this show is the perfect example of that. Now, Mo, one last plug of what you got coming this week as far as content goes up on Bleacher Report.
So I released a video on Wednesday talking about Fernando Mendoza potentially sitting out the first quarter of the season. You won't guess who I have being the bridge gap quarterback. Check that out on Bleacher Report. I talked about a potential bridge gap quarterback that could start the season, and then Fernando Mendoza take over in maybe October, or maybe even November, depending on how that bridge gap quarterback performs. I also wanted to say one more shout out to Anders, because for me going forward, it's just about, and I'm sure for you too, Scott, building a brand. I'm sure Anders would agree with this. As a company, what are you? What is your product? You have to build, you have to establish that brand and then continue to build it. Wherever you go, wherever you're going to do, you have to have something that defines your brand, your product, your service, whatever it is you're providing to the public. And that's what I continue to do, whether I'm covering the Raiders or covering the league. Shout out to Anders again.
Yes, and that's the background. I started off in journalism broadcasting, and then I spent the better part of 20 years in corporate communications and branding, right? So Mo, that is great advice for everybody out there, no matter what. I don't care if you're a teacher, a bus driver, doesn't matter. What Mo said is absolutely true. So take that advice. Mo comes with the sage advice as he gets ready to turn 40 and become an old man like me.
I don't know if you see, I got some gray hairs growing in my little beard here. Not little,
Some.
I got some gray. I got a few strands that have crept into my. I gotta go to the barber and get those cut out.
I love it, man. I love it. All right. Well, listen. So everybody, thank you again. I can't thank you enough for the support over all these years. And Mo, my friend, again, you are not only a good friend, you're a good man. I've always been your biggest fan and will continue to be, no matter what goes on in your life and no matter what you end up doing. And I know we'll continue to work together a little bit, and who knows what comes down the road. But I first of all want to thank you for your commitment, all your hard work dedicated to the show, to promoting the show, to being an invaluable piece of what we built here. And that's the thing, I may have started this, but everybody who contributed along the way was a major reason why it succeeded. And of course, Mo and I, with the longest tenure together here, I think really built this into what we both wanted it to be. And so I just want to thank you, my friend. And of course, we'll be in constant touch anyway, but I just want to thank you publicly for all you did and your support and your personal support of me too, as well.
Yeah, I won't be long-winded here, but way back when we first connected, Scott, you were the first person to really put me on air with consistency. I'd done spots over the phone and spots here and there, but Scott was the first person that really believed in me and said, this guy's a writer for Bleacher Report, but we're going to put him on video. And I remember being apprehensive about going on YouTube and being on YouTube all the time. And I was like, it worked out for the better, because now I have the Bleacher Report video. And that came after working with Scott. And I want to say that helped. Working with you, Scott, helped me forward my career in the video space. So public thank you to you too, because you helped, again, build my brand, expand my brand. And I can't be thankful enough for that. So for the people out there who think the show is no longer being on air because of a split or some type of rift between Scott and I, not the case. We're grateful for each other. We've helped each other grow in this personal space.
Absolutely. And you're welcome. And I'll tell you, Mo, that's the one thing. And, we've had conversations off air about this, and that is as you get busier and as your career progresses, your life progresses, it's hard to cut out time for other people. But that's one thing I've always believed in, has been is giving back, right, and helping others. And I know you do a lot of this with young journalists as well. And to me, that's always been the case, because there's been someone who's helped you. And so now, to me, it's a responsibility of us as human beings together, no matter what background you come from, no matter what your beliefs are, to help one another. That's how we get through this thing called life. It's not something that is lost on me. And so you can't do it. And sometimes you get burned. Yeah. We've all been burned, where you help somebody and they don't appreciate it, and they do something negative, whatever. Don't let that stop you. Always help somebody with a step up. And I've had millions of people do that for me, and I continue. And Mo's helped me too. You've helped me with football understanding. I'm not the big X's and O guy, but you helped me understand it very much so, as did our guests over the years. So I'm very thankful for that. But again, we're not going anywhere. You're going to see us around. Make sure you check out Mo on X at Mo Moton, Moemoton. You can track him there. Get the Bleacher Report app so you can watch his live spots with Raider football news. Also, make sure you follow his work on Sports Now. Silver and Black today, coming back to the web. That's where I'll be as far as Raider content goes. So stay tuned to the channels, and you'll see some other content come out there as well. Mo, my friend, one last time, thanks, but I know I'll see you down the road, so it's not goodbye.
Take care, Raider Nation. I'll talk to you soon, Scott. We'll be on the text. We'll be talking to each other as usual. We just won't be on air every week.
Absolutely.
Like today.
Absolutely. And a big thank you again to all of you out there. Without you, none of this, zero, happens. So thank you to all of the listeners and viewers over the years. Stick around. We'll be around. But I can't thank you enough, and appreciate so much your support. Want to give a big shout out to our producer over the last 3 years here on the audio side. That, of course, was Mike Robier. Dynamite, does a lot of stuff at Odyssey. Going to miss working with him, but he's a talented guy. I know he'll move on to another show and kicking ass like he always does. Our radio producer in Las Vegas, Mark Bonillo, have known now for years. He's been along this journey as well. Thank you to him, as well as everybody at Odyssey, KXNT, and of course, KDON in Las Vegas. All right, Raider Nation, that is it for Silver and Black today. We appreciate you. We will see you down the road. Take care of one another. We look forward to seeing you at the NFL Draft when you get a Fernando Mendoza jersey, right? Anyway, thanks, Raider Nation. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.